Hey, what's up, everyone? Check out what's coming up this week on Legacies. Health Canada's most hated lawyer. No, I'm just kidding.
It was already happening, and I was like, but I couldn't say anything. And so
Yeah, we should.
You know what bugs me more than that? Watching other people win instead of me.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Legacies. I'm your host, Tom Ritchie, joined by co-host, executive producer, Mr. Wesley Bowles. Wes, how you doing?
I'm a little warm today, I'll be honest with you. It's a little warm outside, and I'm not one for heat. I mean, I get that all the time.
Speaking for someone who lived in Texas. And
That's exactly what I was going to say. I lived in Texas for 7 years on and off, and it's different down there.
Yeah, it's a drier heat,
totally,
right? Yeah, we hear this all the time. We're starting to sound old. Well, I am old, but we're starting
it
to
is
sound
though.
old.
It's like down in Texas, if you get in the shade, like you're at least
comfortable.
You feel okay once you're in the shade. But here, it's just, and it doesn't help that the lake is literally 2 blocks away from me.
Help.
Right.
I mean, it's going to add a lot of more humidity, but the breeze,
right?
At least you probably don't get mosquitoes being that close to the lake.
That's true. Yeah, we don't get many mosquitoes, which is nice.
I fucking hate mosquitoes. Seriously, I hate mosquitoes. And they're drawn to me big time. We could be in a group of 5 people. I'm the one. I'm
the same way. And I don't know about you, but I have terrible reactions to them as well. Like I don't just get a little bite. Like I tend to, my bites tend to swell up really bad. Like I have like an allergic reaction to them almost. And
I don't get that.
They're off.
Should try cannabis oil on it. See if that.
That's a good point.
It's like my big fat Greek wedding. Just put some Windex on it.
Yeah, maybe I need to hit up Shauna Levy and see if she's got anything in Magic Mercer for mosquito bites.
She should have
just a little. Just a little rub-on thing, a little stick, like a glue stick.
I wonder if there's any evidence to show that. I mean, cannabis oil helps with a lot of stuff. I've had transdermal THC for pain and stuff, and it worked good. But I'm still looking forward to trying her products. I just haven't got to it yet. God, it's always so much.
We've been pretty busy the last we've been busy the last 8 months or so, but the last couple of weeks have been really
for sure
really busy.
Looking forward. I mean, so long weekend just passed. I kept getting screwed up on the days. I'm thinking Sunday is Monday, and you give me a little bit of time off, and I'm messed right up. And I think for this weekend, obviously we still do some stuff on the weekends, but I had to get the garden done. The veggie garden had to get done because it's planting season. In the back of my mind the whole time I'm going, cannabis is going in the fields too. It's not any different. So I'm thinking about all that work that needs, like Loonrise Farms, right? We've talked to Marty and his brother over there, and we haven't heard back. Probably because they're so damn busy.
They're probably out in the fields.
Yeah.
That's probably what it is.
Speaking of which, I mean, we've got Alannah Davis on today from Dabble Cannabis Company. She is guaranteed busy as hell as well with plants going in the field. I would assume they're probably going in right now. So we'll see what's going on there. And we also have special guest joining us shortly, Harrison Jordan. I don't know who the fuck ever convinced me to allow a lawyer on the show. I'm kidding, obviously. We love lawyers, and especially in the cannabis space, because it helps us understand what the fuck is going on. Sometimes Harrison likes to talk, though, like any lawyer.
Harrison does like to talk, but yeah, exactly. He has some of the things he finds loopholes in the regulations and stuff like that he posts
Health
on
Canada
LinkedIn.
Must fucking hate him. Seriously, he challenges them so often. I remember early days, 2017, 2018, and Trina Frazier. She was always on top of everything, and especially at Ample being compliance, we needed to know as much as we could. And Trina was awesome, but Harrison, I forget when he was called to the bar, 2018, something like that. But he had been working M&P and doing some work at a law school for them, and obviously, cut his teeth into the cannabis industry. And anyways, he's always got some good insights, but I love where he's finding not necessarily loopholes, but challenging the regs to the point where it's like, I think even Health Canada is going, oh, fuck.
Yeah, we didn't think of that.
We didn't think of that.
Yeah.
And then, well, that's a gray area. To have Health Canada ever say, well, that's a gray area. I get it because, they set the standard when it comes to regulations. So they roll out the Cannabis Act and it's enacted by the regulations, but provinces can do their own thing when it comes to distribution, right? For the most part. I mean, obviously they need to follow a certain set of guidelines, but anyways, we'll have him on. We'll keep him, in check. I don't even know what to say.
Good luck with that.
Yeah,
good luck with that. I'll hold you to it.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do. But no, it's going to be exciting to have him in because we've always got questions, and there's one in particular for this week. I don't know if this will become a regular thing, but when it comes to this whole inducement and what retailers can do when it comes to pricing, and I was thinking about this morning. Actually, we always think about the lead up and what we're going to have in the show, and we try to include as much content as we can, but I was thinking through, you've got June launches coming, especially when we're talking the world of OCS. OCS just dropped the report yesterday or the day before. I forget when. OCS, what is it? OCS By The Numbers, I think they call it.
Correct.
And obviously some startling stats in there. But for me, I'm looking at, okay, well, hold on. June rollout is now, which is, that must be their summer launch. They have 2 launches. But I'm thinking about the retailers that are still holding some fall product that launched during fall, and maybe it was flow through GL, who knows? But they need to clear it out. And if you're sitting on product that did not move for whatever reason, there's a number of reasons, but I'd want to be able to discount that out right to the point where even if I cover my costs, I got to get rid of it because I've got new products becoming available that I want to put on the shelves because obviously the good brands, they put marketing efforts behind those, and those are the ones that will ultimately sell. So anyways, we'll see what Harrison has to say about that. Should be an interesting conversation. I got to go back to something you brought this up a few episodes ago, and I've never really seen it, although spending a lot more time in podcasts, not necessarily for competition, but inspiration, how people are doing things. You brought up liquid death water. And I know you're a huge fan of your mom's house, YMH.
Your mom's
right?
house.
Yeah, your mom's house.
Yeah.
And now I've started, I love it. I mean, they're ruthless. They just talk about whatever the fuck they want.
So what you get when you get comedians running a podcast, it's great.
They were talking about eating ass the other day. I'm like, what the fuck? I don't think our audience wants to hear about eating ass. But anyways, you got me on this whole, because I kept seeing, I thought at first it was a beer can and they're drinking beer or something. And then you had shed some light on, no, it's liquid death water. Not, from what I can tell, not huge presence in Canada. I don't know. But I've been seeing it more and more on podcasts. Like do they sponsor a bunch of podcasts? And if that's the case, hey, liquid death, I'll try it. But I do have to ask a question. What the fuck's so special about it? But number 2, have you seen their marketing campaign they're running right now?
Currently, no.
Okay. So their newest one is, and I'm gonna have to go back in time to add some information to this. Liquid Death is giving away a jet. You're muted. You're still muted. Yeah.
There we go. Sorry about that. $400,000 fully functional fighter jet.
Right.
Okay. Real quick before you keep going, this reminds me a lot
PepsiCo?
of a failed. Yes.
Well, and so when I'm hoping you'll be able to pull a clip out because they're quick to call out. You'll remember back in the 90s, a kid, and I remember this very well. I was 15 years old. Anyone wants to do the math? So I remember this. PepsiCo had a huge campaign. It was gathering PepsiCo points or Pepsi-Cola points or whatever it was to redeem. And at the end of the commercial, I remember seeing the commercial all the time. It was with Saturday morning cartoons. I would see it all the time. You could win a fighter jet. Well, some fucking kid did. He gathered enough points to be able to claim that jet. And Pepsi said, no, that was a joke. But there was no disclaimer on it at all during the ad. So this day and age, I would think they'd fail. But anyways, this kid and family, I would assume, took Pepsi to court. And the judge ruled, come on, no one this came up with, I remember studying this years later in advertising school, that there was no reasonable, that's it. No reasonable explanation or how am I trying to say this? No reasonable individual would ever think that Pepsi would ever give away a jet.
Right.
But to the point that they advertised it. And they said, if you can come up with 1 million, because it was like, incremental gathering of points and as you drink a Pepsi, fuck Pepsi. No. But there was, the judge ruled there's no way, like, come on, who would actually think this? But there was no, fine print about it. There was no disclaimers on the TV at the time. So anyways, they failed. And Liquid Death is calling this out, saying, you'll remember back in the 90s, someone, we were actually giving away a real jet. And that comes with 6 months of hangar space. And I'm thinking, first of all, I don't know enough about pilot licensing. We do have a friend that has a pilot's license. I want to win this now. I don't know where you buy this product. And I don't know necessarily that I would, but I'd love to win it.
Yeah, that'd be pretty outrageous. Hopefully they're not making the same mistake. I mean, the Pepsi Jet one was so bad that they now have a documentary about it online with the whole whole litigation behind it. And
I don't know how much it's going to take to win this. But where I'm looking at this is framed from the aspect of, so for this, as many purchases, scan a valid receipt, you get an entry, and it's open to as many as you buy and enter. And I'm thinking, fuck, could you imagine? Like, you can't even come close to this type of marketing in cannabis. Not even close. I mean, giving away something is one thing, but you tread into that inducement, right? Even if you're saying no purchase necessary, enter to win, you're technically treading into that inducement territory. And I don't know.
Can I just say as well, I love that this jet is called the Dehydrator. That's just next level.
I did not realize that Liquid Death's tag was murder your thirst, which I think is good too.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah,
so good.
It's pretty good.
Well, whoever wins this, give us a shout.
Yeah. We know a pilot, I think, can drive or fly it.
Yeah, give us a shout. A, we'd like to have you on just to discuss it. But B, love a little ride if you're offering them. But
I don't know. Is the contest open to Canadians?
I'm going to take a look here.
So is this a joke?
Dude, even this helmet. Look at this. Look at this Liquid Death flight helmet.
But I'm more curious about a cockpit cup holder and how well it would stay in there. But
so let's see here. What happens if we get picks? Eligibility requirements. Here we go.
Is there an alternate cash prize?
Sweepstakes is open only to legal residents of the U.S. The 50 U.S. states are TC, 18 years or older. Thank God they put an age limit on it.
Yeah. Well, the underwriting on this contest must be outrageous. Talking about lawyers, right? You'd be signing your life away. Imagine someone gets it first trip down the runway. They take off, crash, then sue Liquid Death. I don't know. Obviously,
you can have if you choose not to take the jet, which I don't know why on earth you wouldn't. You could take a briefcase full of $250,000.
Give me the cash, now, man. I would take the cash.
Well, it's the States, remember, so you're instantly losing half of that sales money, that money to tax.
But you would have to pay a tax on the capital gain. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a tax expert, especially when it comes to the U.S. But it's one nice thing we have in Canadian law is any prize winnings you don't pay tax on, right? 65 million. Speaking of that, one of the things, I don't play the lottery very often, but I have the OLG app, and every once in a while I'll play when it's big, like everyone, which obviously bolsters the fucking prize lot. I go to use the app to scan a ticket, and it tells you what the next prize draw is going to be immediately without scanning anything. I know as soon as I open the app, I didn't fucking win. And that drives me insane. Right. And it's the same thing, some put out those little tea-tote boards and all those things out front of their variety stores or whatever, and you can see what the prize is. But I'll go to open the app to scan. I'll remember, I bought tickets to that. I know as soon as I open, I didn't win $65-70 million, and that bugs me. I don't know why it bugs me so much, but to the point where I'm wanting to write OLG.
You know what bugs me more than that is watching other people win instead of me.
Yeah, especially when they're not friends or family. You motherfuckers. Anyways, what else is going on? I don't know if we need to get into the OCS by the numbers, but there were a couple stats in there.
I think there's a couple key stats in there that I'm going to overlay these stats on the screen because I'm not going to pull up the whole PDF here, but there was a couple of key stats in here that I found interesting. I think the first thing I'd kind of like to know from the OCS, and maybe I've got to do some digging for this data, but they did surveys obviously for cannabis consumers in Ontario.
Plus they have all their data too, right?
Right. And I want to know how many respondents they had to these surveys, because I can't find that information in the PDF. But one of the startling numbers was the consumer purchase channels, and they said that 54% of Ontario consumers shop from only legal cannabis channels, whereas 39% of Ontarians say they consume from both the legal and illicit market, and 7% said they only consume from the illicit market. So, you've got a large chunk there that is still purchasing illicit. And I want to know, I'd like to know the number of respondents to that, because that could be a huge, if they got 300 responses to this survey versus, 100,000, a million, whatever, right? That's number one. Two, I kind of want to know their definitions for illegal channels, right? Like, I think the way the question is phrased could be confusing, right? If I'm grabbing cannabis just from a buddy who's grown three or four plants in his backyard, is the way the question worded letting people respond that way and saying, I purchase illegally, kind of. I don't know. That was just interesting to me. What you mean. And it's a startling number. Because again, it says here something like 10 million, there were like 10 million Ontarians purchasing, and that's a huge number. Oh yeah. That's a huge number, right?
The one that I always gravitate to is, how much profit there was, right? And I know they don't straight out state profits, but you can do the math. It doesn't take much. Figure out how much the OCS is profiting. We love the OCS, obviously, getting the distribution out there. It doesn't matter what industry, it doesn't matter. Like, people are always going to be chastised, right? Companies will be chastised. People running them will be chastised. I mean, at the end of the day, we have a legal framework. We've got distribution. The one thing that I find strange, and if I were retail, and I don't know if it's in that report because I didn't get all the way through it, is how many individuals were purchasing from the OCS.ca as a consumer versus going into retail, and comparing that to sales per region, right? Are they outpacing sales by certain regions? Because there's going to be individuals that, the demographic, they don't want to go into a retail location.
Right? They do have those numbers here. So it looks like 54% of consumers purchased from in-person stores near them, 30% purchased from the OCS.ca, and 14% purchased from other cannabis sellers' websites, so other retailer websites.
Well, how the hell did they do that unless it's medical? Because technically
What do you mean?
Well, the only way you can do it is a click and collect, right? So you're going to either get delivery or you're going to pick it up. You can't, in Ontario, you can't purchase cannabis products off a website and have it mailed to you unless it's under the medical program.
No, I think what they mean by this number is 54% went into the store, made the purchase there,
right.
Whereas 14% made the purchase on the website and then probably went to pick it up, with 30% being on the OCS.ca.
Okay. So 30%, even 30% of that enormous stat is huge.
For the number of retailers out there and all that stuff, that's big for them to still be a 30%.
Oh yeah,
chunk of that. Yeah.
If I was retail, I'd be looking, how do I get that?
Right. I think the other big number we want to talk about, especially we support brands. We're supporting brands launching new SKUs and with distribution and stuff like that. And I think the big number to highlight there for me with the OCS is the change year over year in SKUs available on the OCS. Right.
Yeah.
In 2023, 2,847 SKUs were added and 1,829 were removed.
Jeez.
So, for these brands that like to pump out a new SKU every month, every 2 months, and pump and dump and then move on to the next SKU, I think you're fighting a losing battle there. I think you need to be part of this crew where you're, 5 or 6 SKUs wrong. You're doing it right. You're marketing them properly, promoting them, getting them into as many stores as possible. And, we talked about this a couple episodes, right? Moving to more seasonal SKUs rather than just pumping them out for the sake of exposure, right? I don't know, but I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
It's always challenging. You need to be somewhat reinventing and moving new product to market. I do think that in the case where you have a winner, it's you stick with it, right? And I always go back to Smoker Farms, right? We were joking with them and we're like, you've got a single. I mean, they don't technically have a single SKU, so let me be clear on that. They have flower, they have pre-rolls, and they have vapes now available. So they have 3 SKUs. Maybe they have their flowers in a couple different bag formats, but regardless of that, they do Master Kush Ultra. And it wins. Everyone loves it. They know that if, we're looking for Master Kush Ultra as a cultivar or strain, I'm going to probably buy Smoker Farms. But for brands, it's no different than, take for instance, Liquid Death, right? Liquid Death, I thought they just did water. Apparently they do iced tea and they do. So brands and companies need to consistently move new product to market in order to be enticing and have reason to advertise, I would think. But it's got to be tough. It's got to be really tough.
Yeah. The final thing I'll touch on here too on this subject is that same survey respondents, right? When they're talking, they were asked the questions, does legalizing cannabis, has it been good for Canada? 74% of those survey respondents said yes, with a multitude of reasons. The interesting parts here are the ones who said no. Here were the top 3 downsides of why they said it does not benefit Canada. Number 1, it creates safety concerns if people use cannabis irresponsibly. Fine, while driving and stuff like that. Absolutely. Sure. Number 2, expands access for people who shouldn't be using cannabis. Okay. The final one here is, I think, where it's the stigma in writing, right? Number 3 is simply normalizes cannabis use. Right. That's and there it is in writing that the stigma is still there in the eyes of 25% of Ontarians.
We should do a contrast and compare and find some recent data that's put out by the LCBO and see what kind of surveying they're doing. We had some experience with Last Call Analytics and we understood some of the data that came out and some of the surveying, but we should do a contrast and compare because that specific question, is it normalizing the use of? I would like to know that in comparison to alcohol. It seems, and as someone that's kind of taken a back seat to alcohol, I'll have the odd beer alcoholic beverage, but for the most part, I drink non-alcoholic now. And mostly just because the next day I feel like shit. So if I'm going to, live it up, I'm going to drink a few, not just one, because one too makes me feel like shit. But I would love to see, I'll say that when I break out a non-alcoholic in a group of friends that are drinking, a non-alcoholic beverage usually gets me flagged. And they're like, what the fuck? Why even bother? And I'm like, well, because I just want the taste of it. Like, and I probably was in that same group way back. But alcohol has become so normalized that when you're drinking a non-alcoholic, even a beer, you get called on that. So where's the middle ground? I don't even understand. It's like if I'm not drinking now, I'm chastised because I'm not drinking alcohol.
I mean, yeah, it's normalized to the point where you have fucking stadiums named after, Budweiser Stage and all that other stuff, right? Like it's that's
Fast
how normal it is.
25 years and we've got, Chronos Stage or whatever one of these big winners are doing right now. We saw that. I mean, we have seen, OCS By The Numbers that put out the top performing brands. Well, yeah. One, they're huge. They have huge marketing budgets. They understand how to market, and then distribution, right? And after you get that distribution, it does come down to the marketing and how are you supporting your retailers? How are you ensuring that they're going to promote your brand in store? Do you have, in-store displays? Do you have tent cards? Do you have any of this type of peripheral that supports the sale of that product in the store without inducing and fucking inducement? Anyways, that's why they're there. Your shreds and your various, Chronos products, Lord Jones and cookies and all these other ones, like they're going to win on distribution and sales.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all the people we expected to be on that list. So it's not to say, again, contrast and compare, look at it in the Bev Elk space, right? Your craft brewers are not going to come out on LCBO's top report of killing it across Ontario. They won't. No.
Well, what do you think? Is it, should we speak to a lawyer? Call a friend. It's like Better Call Saul. We need to come up with something.
We should. I'm gonna go change in my suit and tie, and then we'll
let's see
we'll
if
bring him in.
Let's see if he's wearing pants. You've seen these fucking lawyers and get their tie and stuff on. I'm sure he's not going to show up in a tie, but
are legal jokes and stuff okay? And then like if I jump in and say objection and all that shit, or is that too much?
I don't know if he's a trial lawyer. He might not even know what's going on with it. He's a smart dude, and he's certainly in tune with what's going on in the industry. We need to ask him this, but I don't want to get into another 20 minutes with him where I hear him and Rob McPherson potentially will have some sort of charity boxing match. There's been a lot. I don't want to draw attention to it, and I certainly don't want to give any more stage to Rob McPherson. Some of what he says is very true, and people don't like the truth. The way in which he says it certainly offends a lot of people.
There's an accountability piece missing there of the, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think some of the stuff he says is, like you said, very, very valid from a CPG perspective, but you could conduct yourself a little bit differently, I think. But
hopefully this charity boxing match would be there. I mean, we could pull the Joe Rogan and Legacies ringside and commentary on it. That would be killer.
It'd be like what's it from Dodgeball? That's a bold play, Cotton. Let's see if it plays out for him.
Yeah. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
I might watch that tonight. So
oh my God, it is a good one. All right, well, let's bring Harrison in. If everyone's ready, we're going to bring Harrison Jordan in, our legal beagle. Maybe we can call him the legal beagle. Anyways, he's putting up a good fight. One of the reasons that we see some of the change we see is because of Harrison, or at least, I shouldn't say change, intent when it comes to brands and what they're trying to achieve. So anyways, let's bring him in. Take a quick break. Be right back with Harrison Jordan.
The following segment does not constitute actual legal advice.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Joined by Harrison Jordan of Substance Law, Health Canada's most hated lawyer. No, I'm just kidding.
They love me.
We were joking earlier and said they must just hate seeing those emails coming from Substance Law because you challenge them and ask a lot of questions, which we are thankful for. As much as I ride lawyers and, we've got a relationship and a little bit hard on lawyers, not substance lawyers, though. We need you. Welcome, Harrison.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure joining. And I don't think Health Canada hates me too much because I'm bringing up issues that they may not have thought of.
That's true. Yep. And we know that how far in are we now? God, I don't know, 7 years, something, whatever. In the early days, it was the wild, wild west, right? So even though we had an act and then we had the regulations, it was still, what the fuck does this mean? I don't even know. Right. And that is, so it's nice. And, Trina and Robert and a lot of these other lawyers that have practiced within cannabis space. But Health Canada didn't make it easy in the early days. So we needed legal minds like yourself to be able to help us sort through the craziness that were the regulations and that are the regulations. But we appreciate you joining us. There's always a topic, you're very active, especially on LinkedIn. Sometimes you get yourself in a little trouble, which is good. We like to see that too. But you had a post, and I'd like to focus today. This could become a recurring thing where we get you to come in and answer some questions. But for this segment, there was a post a few weeks back, obviously with us and High Flyer Media and all the brands we work with. There was this whole post around, hey, pro tip, if you're selling cannabis at a retail location at 90% off, it could potentially fall within the world of inducement. Although I don't know if that's the correct term. I'm sure you can correct me on that. And then that got me wondering, asking Wes questions this morning, even about, well, hold on, fall and winter products are starting to let's say fizzle out, or they should be now that we're entering spring and soon to be summer. I need to clear products out. And it's not just around the world of discounting a product, because we see that all the time. But massive discounts, is that an inducement, right? And then we get into the world of, what about accessories? What about all these other things? So let's start with the initial post, because I think you had caught somewhere a retail location potentially had something marked at 90% off, and who knows what the product is, good, bad, why are they clearing it out? Is it near, end of air quote shelf life? But let's start with that. What did you see and what did it mean?
Yeah, well, let's take a step back. So we've had the Cannabis Act since 2018, and one of the curious provisions in the Cannabis Act is the provision against inducements. You can't offer an inducement for the purchase of cannabis, and you can't offer cannabis as an inducement. But what is this word inducement? And so
I was going to ask if you could clarify that, because and we speak to brands a lot and retailers, and we'll bring something up that we think is like, everyone should know this. And in some cases, the retailer or the brand may go, what? I can't do that? Right. So let's start with inducement. What is inducement when it comes to the Cannabis Act?
So in the Cannabis Act, you cannot sell cannabis, or if you sell cannabis or cannabis accessories, you cannot give it out for free.
Right.
So that's one thing. That would be considered an inducement. Another thing is if you're offering an inducement for the if you're offering the cannabis as an inducement, so you're saying buy something and then get
like a buy one get one free type of situation,
some free cannabis,
or percentage off. Or,
we'll talk about that shortly. But the examples Health Canada uses, if you say, first of all, if you give the cannabis or accessories away for free, if you're a seller of those things, that's an inducement. But if you say buy something and then get free cannabis or free accessories, that's offside. And then if you say something like buy cannabis and get some other product for it, that is not permitted. So those are, in general, the way it's characterized in the Act and by Health Canada. And the term inducement is not in of itself defined. The language comes from the Tobacco and Vaping Products Act. It's a bit tweaked, as the Cannabis Act is. They probably thought, let's take the language, but let's update it. And so that's likely what was done. But over time, you've had different Health Canada interpretations or positions as to what's an unlawful inducement.
Right.
So,
and we're not talking sorry, Harrison, when you said not giving or giving away cannabis, much different than the sampling programs that are permitted when legally done properly. Because as a brand, you can obviously give out samples that need to go to, bud tenders. They have to be properly excised. Like, there's a lot of things around that. So it's not necessarily that. We're talking just handing out cannabis, retail locations handing out cannabis, that sort of thing. Yeah,
handing out cannabis to the general public, whereas there's an exemption for companies that produce cannabis to give cannabis to companies, persons, entities that are authorized to sell cannabis. Health Canada takes the position that, as I've asked them in the past, that you can't send a sample to another licensed producer's employee to take. That is to consume. That is considered research, and you need a research license. However, Health Canada takes the position that if the province, if the respective province allows it, you can give the samples to the provincially authorized retailer and or their employees if it's if them taking it, using it, whatever is in the course of their duties, if it's authorized by the authorization of the license holder. So yes, that's exempted. In terms of inducements, we should start off by saying that inducement is not the same as enticing. The Cannabis Act, albeit in limited fashions, allows promotion. There's nothing saying that you can't make your products enticing. It's the inducement. And so Health Canada has come up with this concept of you cannot induce someone to start purchasing cannabis if they would not have started to purchase cannabis, and you cannot induce them into overuse, overpurchase. I mean, that is obviously quite subjective.
Well, and that's what we wonder, right? Because there's so much around it is like, well, any promotion is kind of an inducement, and depending on how you distill it, right? Which is you're putting it in front of people, age gated, minors aside, right? But we're talking more about, we were just joking about liquid death water earlier, and they were giving away a jet and doing this stuff, but it was proof of purchase necessary to be entered to win. Totally offside when it comes to cannabis.
I would say it actually depends.
Spoken like a true lawyer.
Sorry, if proof of purchase is required, then no. Although if it's based on entering a store and not buying it, it may be, and that's actually where I'm seeking clarification from Health Canada on. So if we take a step back, a few years ago, Health Canada released in a bulletin about promotions. It was useful because they actually put some interpretation to the act and the regulations. But what they did say, which caught my attention, was that temporary discounts are likely unlawful inducements. And they use the example of the language limited time offer. So while supplies last.
Right.
But how they stated it, you couldn't determine, okay, is it just if you use language like that? If you simply say temporary, but you don't, or you say we have a sale and it happens to be temporary, but you don't say while supplies last, is that still offside? And that was not clear. And I informally, no one paid me to do this, I informally lobbied Health Canada to tell them temporary discounts or unlawful inducements. Well, you've just made illegal any retailer, any medical LP that sells cannabis for a discount on 420. And then it really begged the question, okay, what about weekly sales? I mean, is that a temporary discount? It's temporary, but you're repeating it every week.
That's a strange area, because we see this all the time, right? Where I've seen banners on retail locations and it's, I don't know what the price is, $60 ounces Sundays or something like that, right? And you see your Thirsty Thursdays, and there's usually a discount attached to certain products that they're promoting on, or category they're promoting on any particular day. Obviously, this is going on. Health Canada doesn't have a ton of inspectors out, and I think they usually go based on, which then falls by the province, though, right? So someone would have to narc someone out, I would assume. At least call attention to, hey, that's potentially offside. I don't know if that goes to Health Canada or if it would go, in Ontario's case, to the AGCO first, or where that goes.
If you wanted to be as big a narc as possible, you would report it to both.
Okay, right. So, but it still begs the question, like we see it. I think with removing all this, you're putting the retailers at a major loss, which then affects the brands, right? And you want to be able to promote, but obviously you need to do so, within the regulations, which is why you've probably challenged them so much on clarification.
Yeah, it's just clarification that I'm looking for. I've another initiative of mine has been to put together a wish list of regulatory amendments, but that's neither here nor there, because when I'm going to them asking about the words in the act or the regulations, I'm looking for their position on it. And so I informally lobbied to Health Canada saying this is going to criminalize everyone. And I'd like to think that had some effect. I don't know. I should probably file an FOI request. Actually, I have already filed an FOI request to see what came out of this.
It makes you wonder though, right? When you've got a lawyer, someone with a legal background that's been in the space long enough, you've read the regs inside and out, the Cannabis Act inside and out, all the supporting documentation, and you're going, wait a second here. Imagine, Joe Blow like me reading it and going, I don't know. I just give up. I'm not sure. I'm just going to do it anyways, and beg for permit or beg forgiveness later, right? And I think that's where a lot of them are taking the stance of, I'm just going to do it. And if I get in trouble, then I get in trouble.
Yeah. Well, on that front, there's been a relative lack. At one point it was reported by Health Canada that there have not been administrative monetary penalties. Perhaps some have been issued since. I think that was maybe a year or a couple of years ago. Maybe that's another thing to file an FOI request about. But there's not a lot of a bite to the bark of Health Canada. Typically, they will send out a letter saying, we don't agree with what you're doing. And then it's a decision that the licensed producer has to make. It's always a risk, and it's much more a risk now. Essentially, though, with inducements, at some point after I had told them, guys, you can't criminalize every seller, they amended their position when it comes to whether discounts can be inducements. And so they now look at a four-factor test. And those factors include the size of the discount and where the discount is. Is it in store at the point of sale, or is it out and about? Obviously, promotion is limited, but still, is it out in the general public? And that goes hand in hand with their position that inducement means, or at least includes, whether it's going to get someone to start using if they haven't, or to use more or buy more or overuse versus what they would buy. But Health Canada is not clear if that's the only definition of inducement. Okay, like what if you have something that doesn't do those things, but Health Canada still thinks it's an inducement? Is the definition?
There's still a lot of subjectivity. Yeah, that's a lot of subjectivity, right? Like, especially again, back to the point where I want to bring in, OCS launch July, June launch products, and yet I'm sitting on stuff that I don't want to have an RTV. That's a whole process. So like any retail, in any world of retail dealing with CPG, I'm going to blow it out. I got to get rid of it, which technically I could argue, hey, I wouldn't have bought that, but it was $10 an ounce. I'm going to give that to my friends. I don't know, not my good friends, but you know what I mean? Right. And it's a matter of, that's typical business to me. That is normal business procedures to be able to control your inventory. So you have fresh products coming in, you're getting rid of the old, bringing in the new. So where is this at right now? Because there was the initial post and it was like, hey, just in case if you're blowing it out at 90% off, it would then what? So you reached out to Health Canada. What was their response on it?
Well, I didn't reach out to Health Canada specifically on that example.
On that one, okay, yeah.
But I did reach out to the AGCO with Health Canada and with these multi-factor tests that they like to use to determine things. If there's one factor that is based on the circumstances skews heavily in one way or the other, then it's going to be very determinative. So I think that even, let's say, if the promotion saying it's 90% or 85 or 90, whatever, is in a store, the fact that it is such a high discount would likely have Health Canada saying it's an unlawful inducement. But what's interesting is that the AGCO, the regulator of cannabis retail stores in Ontario, takes a different approach. So they have told me that they do not prohibit discounts and sales. What is prohibited is making a discount conditional on the purchase of cannabis, and that is a discount of any size. So buy this cannabis and get 10% off another cannabis. That is not permitted. Whereas sales of any size, theoretically 90%. I mean, if it's 1 cent, it's an interesting thought experiment. Is it a discount or is it effectively zero? And so we don't know from an AGCO perspective, but they do not police the discounts unless it's conditional upon a purchase. Whereas with Health Canada, they have said that a discount may be an inducement, depending on the 4-factor test, including the size of the discount, but it may also not be an inducement. However, what's unclear with Health Canada's promotion guidance is whether the discount on cannabis, it potentially being not an inducement, is that the case only for straight discounts? Let's say, gets 10% off a cannabis product, or is the notion that it may not be an inducement also applicable in a conditional context, such as buy this cannabis product and get 10% off? With the AGCO, it doesn't matter the discount if it's conditional.
They say no. Yeah.
Whereas Health Canada, it would seem, they say a discount may be an inducement. Okay, well then does that mean it only that position only applies for straight discounts, or where there's a conditional as well? Certainly, if you buy cannabis, if there's a promotion saying buy cannabis and get a free product, a non-cannabis product, that is an inducement. But my second clarification to ask them was, okay, does it actually have to be conditional on a purchase? So what if the promotion, as it is sometimes done for grand opening of stores, which we have less because there's less, the rate of opening is less. But if the promotion is first 10 people in line who come into our store get a free stove, no purchase necessary. So is that an inducement? Because it's not technically, an AGCO would say, no, it's not conditional on purchase. And so according to their reasoning, it would not be. And then the third thing I wanted to clarify from Health Canada was whether a discount on a non-cannabis product conditional on purchasing cannabis will always be an unlawful discount. So it's pretty clear from Health Canada's expectations that if you say, buy this cannabis product, get a free stove, that's offside. But what if it's buy this cannabis product, get 10% off a stove? I mean, it's still...
Well, perfect example is this, right? Because we just went, I did find one in store and actually happened upon it, was... So Cannara Biotech Nugs, they can produce great hash, but they also make a small little happle, they call it, for consuming your hash. Purchase Old School Hash by Nugs, get 10% off a happle. I haven't seen that. I'm not saying I'm seeing that, but that is very similar to what you're saying. It's it's not non-cannabis. I mean, it's not cannabis, obviously, but it's a cannabis accessory.
It would fall under accessories. Yeah, would it not?
So I mean, I can't speak to any particular situation, but accessories are an item that are part of the inducements framework.
Right.
Although, there's certainly interpretations as to if something is a cannabis accessory. So it really depends on how it's being promoted. But again, if you're giving a discount on one and you're not giving it for free, it certainly can be argued that that is onside, subject to Health Canada's position. I may not have Health Canada's position entirely clear, so don't take what I say as legal advice. But I would it's those are the areas where there is some wiggle room, or there may be some wiggle room, I should say, because of the fact that what you're offering is a discount. And so based on my read, if you're telling me that promotion is buy some cannabis and then get a discount on an accessory, I would say certainly from a Health Canada perspective, it can be argued based on their guidance promotion that it is A-OK. The issue is that Health Canada has not provided that guidance. And that's the clarity that I'm seeking, and that I think they want to seek too, because if it's not clear for parties what the expectations are, how is Health Canada ever going to sustain an enforcement action?
Yeah, exactly.
It's in everyone's best interest that we know the rules, and
exactly.
The industry is fast changing, and Health Canada is not going to have all the answers from the get-go. They're not psychic. They're human, and so that's why I would like to think that, as annoying as my emails may be, and I don't do it for fun, I do it because I need to provide the best advice I can to my clients.
Absolutely.
And Health Canada does not provide legal advice, but it is and I, when I have a feeling they're going to reply and tell me that, I put that in the email saying, yeah, I know Health Canada doesn't provide legal advice. I'm just looking for Health Canada's position on this, and it would provide clarity to my clients as to what they need to expect. And so sometimes you have to tell them, I understand I'm perhaps mentioning a specific hypothetical, but these are hypotheticals that happen in the industry.
Absolutely.
I am not, coming up with these pie in the sky scenarios.
What if we did this versus this, and then just throw that at Health Canada? Well, I don't know if I certainly understand that a little bit more, but maybe now I'm a little bit more confused, because there's certain things I would think make sense, but don't make sense. I think for our audience watching, obviously, if you're in the retail space, we're talking mostly retail right now, because that's where a lot of this activity is happening. Inducement for brands, we're not going to worry about that right now. But if you're a retailer, you're questioning if you're onside or offside, Harrison is absolutely someone you should speak to, because he's at Health Canada's air quote door on a regular basis and seeking the clarification. Harrison, how can everyone get in contact with you? We'll put it up on screen, but.
Yeah, well, you can give me a call, 647-371-0032. You can go to my website, substancelaw.com. You can search for me on LinkedIn.
You're easy to find on LinkedIn.
Well, I don't have a Top Voices badge yet. I might have to answer. I don't.
That's bullshit. We got to get that.
We're going to fix that. That's bullshit.
Can you get one just from writing posts, or do I have to answer those?
I don't even know
questions?
How it works. I don't even have one. But listen, if any of our audience is listening and they're like, oh shit, I wonder if the current air quote promotion I'm running is onside or offside. And you do want to err on the side of caution, hit Harrison up. He's certainly going to give you some advice, but in a lot of cases, it's going to be, hey, I got to reach out to Health Canada and seek some clarification. But there are obvious ones where you've seen them, I've seen them, Wes has seen them, we've all seen them. They're like, oh, that's totally offside. But regardless, you certainly shed some light onto the subject. We look forward to additional subjects. There's always a lot of them. But we appreciate you joining us today, Harrison. It's been enlightening, I think.
I hope everyone left with more answers than questions. If they didn't, this has been my job for the past 5 years. So welcome to being a regulated substance lawyer in a space that is newly legal.
Well, we certainly appreciate you joining us, Harrison. We look forward to potentially a regular spot and having you help clarify some of the craziness that we try to understand on a daily. But good luck. We know you've got clients to tend to. So thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, gentlemen. This has been a blast.
Absolutely. Thank you. Hey, friends, guess what? It's almost t-shirt season. Are you ready? You should be rocking your favorite brand. Head on over to thehighflyer.ca and check out all the licensed cannabis brand swag that we've got available. From Odo to Victoria Cannabis Company, Smoker Farms, Royal Harvest, the list goes on. And there's more coming on every single week. Check it out, add it to your cart, and be prepped. Sun's out, guns out. All right, welcome back, everyone. We're joined by Alannah Davis of Dabble Cannabis Company. Alannah, we finally made it happen. You're here.
Yes, awesome to be here. Thanks, guys.
We weren't sure if we would get you with the looming planting season about to be upon you, and we want to understand that entire world. But we do thank you for being here. We know that you're very busy, especially being CEO of a company, which is going to be an interesting question, Wes, because we have one from last week's guest, which we'll share with Alannah shortly. But Alannah, before current and present, we want to go back in time and understand your world and where that deciding factor was that you were crazy enough to jump into the cannabis space. So how far back are we going? I think it's 2016, somewhere in there, 17 originally when you started scouting. And
well, I have been a cannabis consumer since high school and have always enjoyed it, but didn't necessarily work in the legacy market. My dad was the one who was crazy enough to jump into the cannabis game and decide that he wanted to have a cannabis farm on his farm, as a lifelong consumer and someone who had, grown for a few years, doing the different medical personal grow licenses.
yeah,
And so he decided that's what he was going to do. And he and my brother and a few other consultant folks jumped into the game. And I was actually working on doing my own thing. I had just left my job working for Lush Cosmetics. And I had gone off to do some, business consulting and wanted to be an entrepreneur, start my own business. And my mom said something to me really recently that stuck with me, and I wanted to mention it on this podcast, where I was always searching for what I wanted to do and never necessarily could figure out what that passion was, and kind of, didn't know. And she said, I bet it's because it didn't exist yet. And so then as I was doing some consulting and trying to figure out my own thing, my dad and brother are going down this path, and my mom, of course, they're going down this path, and I end up seeing a job posting for Aurora Cannabis, and it was very similarly in the kind of stream of what I was doing with Lush, and it was kind of a big step up career-wise. And even though I was like really set on I don't want a job, I don't want to work for somebody else, I'm doing my own entrepreneur thing, for whatever reason, I just decided to apply for this job that I didn't want. And instead of not hearing back like I thought I would, I ended up having an interview, offer, and a start date within a week. And it was
wow.
Okay. Cause it was,
so that must have been 2018.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Right at the height of everyone scrambling. Yeah.
Yes. It was chaos. And it was kind of the job I got was kind of a little bit of a split between what the posting was, of course. And back then you were just hop in wherever you can kind of make yourself useful.
Yeah.
And it was really building the foundation of the recreational market that we see today, setting up those supply chains with all of the provinces as their first shipments, filling out all of the registration forms for all the SKUs in the very...
You're giving me PTSD. Stop. But I mean, what a way to enter, right? Because Aurora, they were a client of ours back in the days of Ample, and there was a lot of moving pieces. So you went to school quick when it came to understand, because Aurora was still trying to figure things out at the time. And I want to add something there, because you mentioned, your mom mentioned it didn't exist. I saw something, I can't remember where, it might've been like a Gary Vee thing. And it was just a note, and it said, you're not lost. You're just early in the process. And that has stuck with me so much. And, reminiscent of what you're saying, which is it just didn't exist yet. So anyways, you join Aurora, and we know what that's like. Wes was overseeing all of support for Ample in those days, and we would have 20 different people reach out from Aurora because they were all wearing different hats. So I could imagine what that was like. What was the biggest challenge when you first joined Aurora, other than going, oh my God, like there's so much going on?
Yeah, it was, aside from the regulations and like kind of just that general fear that everybody had of like, oh my God, Health Canada and the provinces, like it was a
They're
very
shut us down.
fear-based situation back then. But the biggest challenge like internally was just how fast everything grew and creating systems with so many different departments. And I wouldn't say a super clear sense of like who's accountable to what and who's, the decision maker for what. And that did, eventually kind of churn into processes. And that was actually ended up being one of my roles, was a business process manager at one of the points in the right after legalization. Basically, I moved from the wholesale operations into this business process role because it was just straight chaos. Like there was no processes. The listing application process back then was like getting some things from the product development spreadsheet over here and like some other things from marketing. And it just became really difficult to operate that way. And so the communication flow across different sites and offices and people and teams and the decision making was really the biggest challenge in the beginning there.
Wow, I bet. I can think through, it was the same thing, right? We were just not just supplying compliance software, but we needed decisions, and those decisions took a long time in some cases because they were jumping from department to department. In some cases, it was based on the site, and management operations were in one area, yet Sky was producing a ton, right? They came online a little bit after, but I just couldn't imagine. I mean, it would have been fun and rewarding as well, but probably very stressful. So, and during your time at Aurora, was your dad's name's Paul? Is that correct? Doug, sorry, I apologize. So Doug had already started, I would assume, MMAR, ACMPR. He's doing some medical grow. Was that existent then when you were at? No, it wasn't yet.
He had departed from that personal grow because it just lots of reasons. And upon legalization, he kind of was just like, I'm kicking this back off. And we have a grower that's been with us since the very beginning. His name's Ross, and he's our only employee that we have had year round since day one. And so he's been a huge support, who's also been, a medical patient grower for quite a time.
Well, and keeping those growers, one, we know the brain drain that happened, right? As more companies are coming online and everyone's looking for the best, and being able to keep your arms around that individual and keep them that long is obviously a sign of what you're doing and doing it right. But at what point, so around legalization, you were with Aurora, I think, 3.5 years, somewhere in that. Yeah. What point did you go, okay, we're going to go all in, right? We've got a farm. We've got a beautiful space in Duncan. It's in Duncan, right? Duncan, BC?
Yeah. Cowichan Valley.
We've got, and which I think I read somewhere, the only place in Canada or outside the Mediterranean that you get a Mediterranean climate. Like, what? So we need to understand that too.
I'll just quickly touch on that. So the Cowichan Valley is what they call a mean Mediterranean climate, which, as far as I understand, means that just like we don't have a huge range of temperatures. Although this year was really, we had a cold snap of -20 for like a week, and we skated on our lake, which was awesome. But the Indigenous band here referred to the Cowichan Valley as warmland in their language. And so I always thought that was kind of a beautiful thing. And it does get super, super warm here in the summer. Like we've got quite a few wineries and a lot of cannabis growing and stuff. So yeah.
Cannabis Valley. I think that, not unlike Emerald Triangles, and BC has their own Emerald Triangle. I forget what it is there, but
us and the Kootenays are definitely some
Kootenays,
big time cannabis growers. So, coming back to your question about the timelines of things. So I started early 2018 and things were just growing like wild. And then it was, I would say, late 2019 when things were definitely starting to show the cracks in the Aurora side. And there was quite a few big layoffs that happened right before COVID, the first round. There was many rounds, but essentially what was happening at the farm was that my dad had gone into the active review process with Health Canada at the time of COVID. Like really it all just kind of like happened where it was like all the layoffs, then COVID, and you're sent to work from home. And then the farm goes into review and all my mom's bookings for the Airbnb cancel. So, and COVID's kind of feeling really intense to live in Vancouver at this point. So I just decided to take a few months and go move to the farm. And it wasn't exactly to like take over anything, but that's just
you're just getting the hell out of Dodge. I'm getting out of Vancouver, man.
Exactly. It was just kind of like, I need some space. And the farm really like not leaving the farm just kind of always felt normal just because, you know, you'd come here just to chill out and stuff. So at that time I came to just get away, and it all kind of really just played into itself where the dream and all of the good people that I had made connections with, so many of them lost their job and things had become pretty like toxic at the time. And, you know, just seeing who they let go in that first round really disenfranchised me for there to be like a future where I cared about Aurora as an organization, because they made the wrong call. They cut low-level staff, low-level management who actually did a lot of work, client care. They did not cut vice presidents and senior vice presidents and directors that all were, anyway, I digress. So at that time, it kind of became like, and prior to that as well, like the whole farm here really kind of felt like a pipe dream for a while, because it was just kind of like everyone and their dog was starting a weed farm, and like it was so expensive and we couldn't get an investor because things had gotten tough by that point. And it was just such a grind. And my dad had just spent the last like 18 months digging on his excavator by himself in the dust to create what our farm is. And at that point, like it also was, he had poured so much of my, you know, of their money and like time into this, that it was feeling really fearful from the family's perspective of like, what are we doing here? But at that point, he's kind of like, we're in too deep. You can't back out now. Like we got to keep going. But it was definitely like a really challenging situation, as well as the fact that like, because I didn't necessarily like think it was going to be a real thing. Like in the very beginning at Aurora, I was kind of like, oh yeah, my dad's going to start a weed farm. And it was like, yeah, cool. But then as it became more and more likely, I couldn't talk about it. And because I wasn't supposed to necessarily be doing that. So it was always just like at arm's length. But then at COVID, I just moved back home, and kind of there was the original people who were involved from like a consulting lens just sort of dropped out and were not involved anymore. And so my dad really needed help from like a regulatory lens, because he can get it done from that whole like physical perspective. And he's like so hardworking, but they do not make it easy from a admin and paperwork side of things.
It's crazy. So, if you're not experienced, you haven't lived it, it's hell. Even when you do understand it, it's hell. Even
when I did live it. And because I had never really worked with Health Canada much, I was more on the provincial side from like the Aurora end. And so it was a steep learning curve. And so for the next, then from like COVID on, I lived a double life of like, you know, living and working there by day, and in the nights working on our application and the review process and getting our SOPs up and running and getting our site licensed, and then operating the site, planting. It was crazy. That first summer, 2021. At that point, I was kind of like, I'm going to need to leave soon. Like we're licensed now. But there's
you
no
thought
money.
You were just getting help getting set up, and then I'll be on my way.
Yeah. But there was no money, like for so long. I still don't have a paycheck like 4 years later.
What's a paycheck? Hey, we work in cannabis. We know what that's like. What's a paycheck? We pay the bills, but
so,
we're coming to live with you. What are we talking about? We're coming to the farm.
Exactly.
So the original intent, I believe it's current. I could be wrong. Is it currently 5 acres, or was that the original design and now it's larger? What's the current footprint?
The footprint of Dabble itself on the farm is a 5-acre little parcel. Our farm itself is larger, but the cannabis footprint is 5 acres with about 4 acres of growing space.
Okay. So original intent, because you do fresh frozen, is that right? Who was so into dabs, right? Because I want to understand where does Dabble come from as a name, but also was that the original intent? Because I think 2019, 20, and even into 21, the vast majority of individuals, when they would apply, I remember this sitting with friends even applying, and they're just like, screw it, just check all the boxes, let's apply for everything. And I'm like, I don't think you want to do that. Like, you're gonna have to satisfy a lot of criteria for Health Canada. But was that the original intent? We want to do 5-acre plot, outdoor grow, we're going to do fresh frozen, and we're going to do concentrates. Is that where it started?
Not exactly.
Or did it change?
Okay. It's so crazy because like it looks like it was very well planned.
It totally
by
does.
Now,
yeah.
But it was not. So the freezers were my dad's original setup because he essentially was like, someone told him like, you can freeze your weed basically. And then like, we were like gonna try and figure it out for drying, but then we didn't have a building. And like a friend of mine who came into my life during my time at Aurora, his name's Mikhail or Mickey. He works for Rubicon as their director of cannabis. And he became a mentor. This is before even he worked for them, but he became kind of a mentor to me because he said to me after meeting me through Aurora one day, he goes, "Oh, you guys should start, you have a farm on the island. You guys should start an outdoor grow and like do a weed farm for concentrates." And it was already happening. And I was like, but I couldn't say anything. And so
yeah, we should.
I eventually then connected with him like offline and just ended up, keeping in touch. And he's been just a really huge supporter and like kind of helped us. And he was like, you guys can't dry if you don't have a bunch of space. And so then we're like, could we dry in the greenhouse? No, but we'd already bought these freezers. And so we were just like, okay, you know what? We're going for it. And back then there was only like one buyer or like a handful of buyers that were even looking for fresh frozen. One of them being Big Cannabis.
I know Scott and team. Yeah.
So I connected with Scott and we just found out that like shipping fresh frozen across the country is like an absolute non-starter financially. And so one thing that Scott put into my head was that he's like, I've built this whole marketing just with Instagram and myself. Like I haven't put a cent into it. And I was like, okay. That always stuck in my head. So then when we were doing this, our original license name was Advanced Medicinals Inc., which is about the lamest name on the planet. And so I was like, our original intention was just to grow, fresh freeze, sell bulk. My dad really only wanted to be a farmer. I was not necessarily like leading things at this point. We were all just kind of along for the ride on my dad's dream. And he's like, we're going to be farmers. We're going to sell it. The mantra of the first season was empty field, empty freezer, empty bank or full bank account. But I had it right when I just slipped there. It didn't work that way. It was empty bank account for a long, long time. But so we tried to sell it fresh frozen for quite some time and ended up trying to make a deal with a new processor. And so we sent them a sample and they came back to us with a price that just really was not going to work. And we were very like desperate at this point. And basically our friends at Alternibus up the road were like, just come here. We'll help you. We'll show you what to do. You can wash it. And so we just happened to have this, couple friends in the industry like Mickey, who are like rosin guys. And I had by this point gotten into concentrates and learned the whole back end through working in product development for concentrates at Aurora, having found and loved rosin, kind of just took a deep dive. So then this is all accumulating and not being able to sell our stuff, being offered a processing space and people to just like help us out. Wow. So my dad and I washed 900 kilos of fresh frozen by hand. And he's like, okay, we're getting a machine here. This is
I was going to say, I think that process has changed now. Oh my God.
Yeah, we couldn't afford to buy one. So we sort of like worked with a local guy to make one, which definitely cost as much as it would have probably to buy one in the end.
Man.
But it's okay. It's cool now. And we just, then at that point, I was like, okay, we're going to go to market. Like, I need to take over now. And my dad was like, yep, I didn't intend on taking this whole new path. Like, off you go. And we came up with the name Dabble after a lot of time spent at the trim table that first season of like harvesting. And it stands for obviously Dabs and Doug Alannah Brody, which is me, my dad, my brother. And we also numerologically balanced it. So all of the name all added up means an 8, which is like success. And as soon as we changed the name, like the whole thing changed. It was quite a different shift in momentum. We started promoting Dabble as a brand. I came out to the world as having a weed farm after I had quit Aurora that first harvest season. About 6 or 7 months later after I quit, I was like, surprise, I'm starting a weed farm and brand, and here we go. And my first ever batch of hash and rosin that I ever made, we took to market.
Were there, man, it's incredible. I love the story behind the name too. The washing of 900 kilograms is not something I want to be involved with.
Not insignificant, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely not. But so you come out, hey, I've got a cannabis brand, and by the way, we already have product because we've been working on it. Were there any naysayers?
No. Maybe like at an executive level, they were like,
behind closed doors type of shit.
But no, everyone who I had connected with was so supportive and like has been still. I've got coworkers that still work at Aurora that buy a lot of my product from like medical or like, and they text me. They're like, oh man, like I love the new jar. Like this stuff is so awesome. Like, and it's amazing. I really built some lifelong friendships working there. I refer to it as kind of like a male plant, that it maybe doesn't necessarily grow the best flower, but it makes seeds that go get planted elsewhere and make some beautiful stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. How do you choose? Because this is one area I'm not overly familiar with. So outdoor cultivars are obviously chosen differently than what you would grow indoors, I would think. Correct me if I'm wrong. But your end state is a concentrate. So how much time is spent choosing those cultivars that they're going to have the proper amount of resins, they're going to be able to withstand heats in this Mediterranean valley we find in BC? Like what goes into that, choosing those cultivars? And do you stick with the same ones year over year to ensure crop success?
Yeah, so we got really lucky that some of the ones that we had, that Ross, our grower, just had as dried flower genetics that just happened to be good washers. Like that's pretty much a gift from the universe for how hard we worked for this, is the way I look at it. Like our strawberry jam is something insanely special that he just happened to have, and it happened to be a washer. Like, thank God. Dabbleberry as well. But the things that you do to choose, like we've got a huge seed catalog and you're constantly trialing plants. And so the criteria to grow outside is obviously like, does it finish fast enough? Like, can it harvest in time for our wet climate in the fall here? Because it's like a rainforest, is the spacing okay? Because of really tightly bound buds are not great for washing, and really leafy plants sometimes, promote bud rot or powdery mildew because there's just like not enough airflow. So we don't want really huge plants for those same reasons, but also just then like taking them down is crazy. So it's a really huge set of growing criteria, but then you get all the way through there and, does it wash? Does it have a nice flavor? Does it yield? Like there's quite a few then criteria. Does it look nice? There's so many. So I think we've probably cut like 45 or 50 strains. Like we grew them and trialed them over the last 3 years, and they just didn't.
And just just axed them. Wow. Because I would think, we go into, indoor grows being, obviously much different, but you pheno hunt, you're controlling the environment. So the output is going to be understood because you're controlling the environment. But in your case, if you want to pop new seeds, you want to try a new cultivar in the field, don't you technically have to keep those in vegetative state, I would assume, and then get them in the ground to see how well, and you can't do, like you would do indoors, 10, 20, 30, 100. You need to see, like you're saying, what is the yield going to be when it comes time to wash? And maybe you could also help us understand what makes for a good washable cannabis product as well.
Mm-hmm. So what makes for a good cannabis, or for a good washer, is that if the trichome head, like cell structure of the cell wall or the head is too weak or is not a suitable strain, it will pop in the wash. So like those will break open, and then you will lose that, obviously that resin and those terps to the water. And some terpenes, I believe, are water soluble, and that's just gone. And so you kind of then also get a lot of stickiness in your drain bags, like your collection bags. So the best ones are actually really like strong heads. And then they also have like that tapered point to the top of the trichome head, or the stalk rather, where it meets, it's like tapered. So there's definitely ones. And now there's so many people that are breeding for resin production and hash production, right, especially in California. There's quite a few breeders. And so you're limited to what you can do for genetics in Canada. But if you work with other licensees as they get licensed, you can bring in new stuff. So I've had the opportunity to bring in some new seeds from, a couple of California growers. I've been able to go to some conferences and stuff for hash production, which have been really interesting, and pick up some genetics from Northern California, I guess. And so I've got one of those in production this year called Noni from Little Lake Seed Valley Co., which is really exciting. And yeah.
Very cool. Okay. But again, you're choosing those specific based on, the response and when you're washing them. But how are you're going through an entire season, I would assume, to see if it's a keeper or not, right?
Yeah. Our lead times are super long. Like I'm kind of thinking of things 2 years or 3 years out. So it's like we do a small batch, like a test batch of like the couple seeds. And like, I unfortunately don't have the space to be doing like, 100 plus, 200 plus pheno hunts, like also because that's risky. So we have had to do them really small scale, which isn't obviously the best genetically, but it's just kind of how it is.
Sure.
And so, we do like a really small patch of like a handful of plants, and like whether that's even worth growing ever again. Like, does it make that first pass? And then if it does, then we'll do sort of like a smaller batch of like maybe like 100 to 200 plants, which is what I'm doing this year. I've got quite a few smaller batches than I have in the past. And then if it's like a really good winner, like our original couple that we've had, the Dabble berry and the strawberry jam, those we grow at like production scale, which is like kind of a much larger batch that I will keep in stock with BCLDB, hopefully throughout the year. And yeah, so I've got 3 of those kind of like evergreen SKUs, let's call them. So hash plant now is a new one that we're going to continue to run with. And then the Dabble berry and strawberry jam. And then this year I've got a bunch of those small test batches. I did one with the XXX last year, and unfortunately it didn't yield at all. Like, so I had the batch of about 100 or 200 plants, and we sold that batch, and people were like, when can I expect more? And I'm like, sorry, you can't. Like, it's gone. But right. I realized with that people love that exclusive small batch drop, like whatever. And so
people love exclusivity.
Yeah,
they love exclusivity. I do. Who doesn't, right?
Totally, right?
Yeah. But I mean, so with where you're located, you get one harvest then? You do one plant, one harvest?
I know have 2
Could you
or
pull
3.
2? That's what I'm curious. Yeah.
There are some cultivators that I know of that use like greenhouse stepping, that they are able to leverage shoulder seasons and have three outdoor harvests in our region. But I'm not there yet with the greenhouses and stuff. And so in the future, I do want to have like some hoop houses and potentially replace some of my just field space with that so that I can have like, earlier drops and whatnot. But
yeah. I mean, it's got to be really tough, especially when, because there's an expectation, obviously, from a consumer perspective, but also just at the provincial level is that if you want general listings, ones that are consistently in stock, you need to be producing, and you're beholden to Mother Nature, right? So have you ever had a crop failure or a partial crop failure?
Yeah, you could say that 2022 was pretty close because we've now got 3 seasons under our belt. The 2021 was a decent both spring and fall, although it rained quite a bit in the fall. And so we did experience some bud rot issues like towards the end. Then 2022 was an absolutely horrendous spring. Like it rained until July. And so our veg plants really struggled. And also because we had a strong spring the first year where we had primarily up-potted our clones to like a 2 by 2 inch cube rather than just like the little 1 inch cubes. But then we had thrown in some 1 inches that just like we had extra space. And so we just threw those in and they did well because it was a strong spring. So we made the decision like, okay, we don't need to up-pot at all.
Okay.
So then pair these tiny babies going out that weren't up-potted and a really rough spring with lots of rain, not a lot of sun, tons and tons of grasses growing because it wouldn't stop raining. And so then you're kind of like, oh, so our plants eventually did finish. And it was the most beautiful fall I've ever probably experienced. Like I went boating in the middle of October one day. Like it was insane. It was so nice out. But they only had grown to such a small size. So while we still finished and everything was still great, and it was actually like perfect harvest conditions, other than maybe even being a bit warm, but we just didn't have a lot of volume because the veg was such a struggle. So you really need both. And then like last year was a great veg season, but then a pretty early rain, like September was nearly all rain. So that's challenging. Right. And we ended up probably leaving thousands of plants in the field, but we still had our biggest year by double. So it's like, can't complain, but also like, wow, we would have even had more. So it's really, we're just in for the ride. Right?
And so being, if I like this, cause I come from a farming family, Farmer's Almanac was the thing, right? They said, even with updated technologies, everything available to you, it was still a Farmer's Almanac thing. So family farm, there's tours and stuff, I think, as well, which I want to learn more about. But does Dad break out the Farmer's Almanac ever?
Not him as much.
Do you?
Well, I don't have one, but I have looked at it online. But our friend Brian at Alternibus, he often tells me what it says.
You'd have to know, right? Like in some cases, you're probably going, I just don't even want. I don't want to know what's going to happen. Let's just play it out.
You can. I mean, I believe this year was a La Nina or something, which is the cold snap, and then a hot summer. And already we're in a drought already. Like it. It's been. Wow. It did rain a little bit the last couple of days, which has been really good. We've needed it. But it has not rained much of May, which is kind of unusual for around here. It's pretty rainy springs usually.
So are all your crops in the field now? All the plants are in?
No, we're going out the latest that we have this year. We hold them in the greenhouse and up-pot everything and let them get really nice and established until June 3rd, the week of June 3rd. And then we're planting.
And then out they go. Okay. Very
Takes
cool.
about 3 weeks or maybe a month. We'll see.
3 weeks spoken from the CEO, and we'll see where the COO sits on it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's all cool. What does the farm tour include? Because I've seen this on the website that you can come. I don't think a lot of people have seen an outdoor cannabis farm. I mean, they see pictures a lot on the inside, what's going on. A lots of white walls, lots of lights.
Yeah, totally.
But to see a cannabis farm at scale, it's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what can people expect coming for a tour?
I haven't actually formalized this too much yet, and I've been meaning to. It's been on my to-do list for a long time. But so far the tours are kind of like a book directly thing, and it's kind of depending on each group or person. All of our Airbnb guests get a tour if they want one. And so it is really kind of tailored on what the person knows. I walk them through, and depending on where we are in the season, like right now, there's not really much in the way of tours because it's just you walk up to the greenhouse. I don't even let you inside, and you just can see from the open doors, like, here's all of our mum plants and our baby plants, and kind of like verbally walk them through what the life cycle is and like when we plant and what they can expect. And then as the season goes, once they're out, I learned really kind of quickly that I don't super want everybody like traipsing through the fields.
Yeah,
so
of course.
I have created something called the petting zoo. And so that's
cool.
a section of plants that are just bound for destruction at the end of the season and are the ones that people can take photos with and touch and smell and like whatever. And then that's where I base like a lot of my tour. Like I'll walk you around and kind of be talking, but most of the time is spent at the petting zoo. And this season I'm going to have some stuff to do, like photo ops with, like a little one of those things. With
yeah. You have to have one.
Yeah. And so people just have really enjoyed that. We've done a few formal tours through StratCan, kind of during the same time as the Grow Up conference in Victoria with a bus and the whole thing, and lunch at the lake. And that's been really
cool.
awesome. And so my sister and I are looking at doing some tours like that. And she's booking those with some seniors homes this summer, because she is a holistic cannabis nurse. She's a nurse for about 20 years now, and she's just started her own business doing cannabis education. And so, yeah, we're going to start those.
That is very needed. Let me say that, especially in that demographic.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
And retailers are really challenged with, well, everybody in this industry is kind of challenged with the restrictions on what they can say. But because she's not a cannabis company, she's not necessarily beholden to quite the same restrictions. Obviously, as a nurse, though, she still is like, has to be particular about what she's saying, but definitely has the ability to offer unbiased education for people that can, talk about different medical ailments that they have and medications that there might be interactions with. Because I even find that a lot of doctors don't necessarily have that education or knowledge.
Yeah.
And so if any retailers have customers that walk in and have questions they can't answer, direct them to the holistic cannabis nurse.
There you go. That makes a lot of sense. And it's so true, right? So, doctors, they spend the vast majority of their time understanding how to prescribe, right? They're fixers. They're treating symptoms. They're not treating the cause, which is understandable. I mean, that's kind of where we sit. But we had Shauna Levy on a few weeks back, and we were talking about the wellness category and the difficulty of being inside there, especially if you're in retail. And the vast majority of retailers are not going to carve out wellness areas. Not to mention the vast majority of individuals visiting retail are not always looking for wellness type products. When it comes
I actually
to that.
disagree with that wholeheartedly. There are so many barriers to the medical system. It's insane. I would say that there are huge percentages of people using recreational cannabis for wellness and, self-medicating reasons.
Yeah. No. We agree with that. What I'm saying is she was looking at it as when trying to be in retail, the difficulty is when you have individuals, the vast majority aren't necessarily entering a retail dispensary going, what do you have for wellness? So when the wellness products are being carried, let's say you have a vape that is a 4-to-1 CBD to THC, and it's just next to the THC vapes, right? It's not an area carved out in a dispensary because it's not typically inclined to be, hey, this is a wellness center. And even certain dispensaries that have tried in the past to be even putting wellness as a label on their store has been shut down, right? You can't do that. But anyways, no, I think that's awesome that she's working with that demographic and being able to coach. And that demographic needs to be treated. One, they need to, these these products have made available to them, and they need guidance on how to use them. But also, it helps decrease the stigma that is around it, because that demographic, as we know, is typically one being open to it, but also very, it's cannabis. Like, let's keep cannabis where it needs to be. I do need to ask, being a woman CEO in this industry, it sounds like you've had a ton of support. But what have you seen? Do you get this mansplaining bullshit that we see all the time? Like, you're not doing this right, you're not doing that right, and not necessarily thinking there's an entire team that is coaching and working with you. But do you experience that yourself at all?
No, I actually experienced it way more in corporate cannabis than I do as a CEO. But I have experienced, obviously, misogyny in the past, like, of course, often not as much anymore because we're kind of a little bit more well known. But in the beginning, people would like orient themselves at my dad in a conversation, assuming he's in charge. And he's kind of like, it's her. And so, there's for sure some mansplaining going on, but I actually haven't had too much. I also am not a person that really like takes shit.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound like from our previous conversations and stuff, you won't tolerate it anyways. But, the fact that it's still going on when you see a company of your success, and we'll say success because you have products in market, you're still operating, you still have a smile on your face at the end of the day. That to me is a sign of success. But there's a lot of individuals that look at it and go, well, why do they exist? Corporate cannabis is where it's at. They need to be big. You want distribution across all the provinces and all this bullshit that comes along with it. And then you have Alannah, woman CEO of Dabble, that's, got the great climate, outdoor grow, pushing product to market, and it's going well. But are there those that are sitting in the shadows waiting for failure, waiting to jump on? Are you over criticized, I guess?
There's some haters, but I mean,
yeah.
I don't.
But again, you don't tolerate the bullshit.
Well, no, and it's kind of like that just for me, like I have, my competition is like my own work, and like also trying to capture legacy, like be good enough for legacy consumers to like respect and want to consume our stuff. That's really my goal. And as far as I'm concerned, like anyone who's in the legal framework, like they're striving as hard as they can too. And it's kind of like anyone who's on the legacy side who's throwing stones, like they don't even know what we're up against.
They have
so
no
it's
idea.
Kind of like,
no idea.
I'm trying my hardest. God. I really love what I do, and I am passionate about learning more, and I do everything I can to try and make our product better. And so if you don't like that about us, like, I don't care, whatever. Like, I don't have time for that kind of like energy. Like, it's just kind of, if you don't have haters, like, are you doing well?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is what it is, right?
For sure. Let's talk about some of the products and where they're distributed, because our audience is, well, actually it's everywhere now. We've got people showing up on our sites from Slovakia of all places. But anyways, we want to understand distribution. But first, let's talk products. Okay. What products are, I think when we were talking, you were packaging still from the previous season. So you still have that going on. But what are your current products?
Yeah, so we actually are exclusively a rosin brand. We right now do not have any other SKUs in the market. I don't even have anything super planned. I've got a few kind of like additional like rosin infused things that, will come from sort of our more B grade product. But rosin's the play. That's just our.
And why rosin? Obviously there's the output product, the inputs and the outputs, but what do you love about rosin so much?
The first dab I ever had of rosin was like the most clear-headed. Like, I was in a hotel at a sales conference in Edmonton or Leduc, and it's like, it's not the most sexy place on planet Earth, but I had this dab and I'm walking around and it's just kind of like in the dreariest, grayest spring, like not nice. And I was just like, wow, it felt like I had rose-colored glasses on. And it just was the most clean, clear-headed high that I immediately was just like, I love this. And it was until I had that, I didn't realize that when I consumed combustion cannabis, like joints and bongs and pipes, that I have a fogginess or a cloudiness that I did not know that I had until I had the absence of. And so now the effect for me of rosin is just so good that I just can't, I don't
couldn't
want
imagine
anything else.
going back to combusted material. I say the same with a lot of different products, which is obviously, I enjoy flower and I'm lazy when it comes to rolling a joint anymore. I usually try to buy pre-rolls, but when it comes to the concentrates, it's that clarity. It's the pureness of the extract that you're experiencing without all of the shit that comes along with, combusting flower, which, even getting to hash, it's still moving towards that 2.0 product. But so that's cool. You got a lot of rosin products. So current, you've got 3 different cultivars that you're producing with that. Can you remind me again what those are?
Yep. So strawberry jam, which was our, probably our favorite for everyone of the launch. So we have dabbleberry and the hash plant, which is kind of the more like earthy dank of the trio. So those are ongoing. And the thing that's tough about outdoor cultivation is that, we only grow once a year, but all of our stuff is kept frozen till it's washed, frozen as hash, frozen as, and then once it's pressed as rosin, it's cold cure, like in the fridge kind of thing. And so it's difficult to talk about harvest dates because customers think that if it was harvested in 2023, that now we're approaching 2024 summer, that it's not good. But like, I haven't even had a chance to, press all of our strawberry jam from last year because that's just, we're such a small team that we're working through it as fast as we can, and trying to keep up with packaging and, planting and cutting clones and everything. And so it's not old. Like it's been kept.
It's cold cured.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, and like in the freezer as hash up until just last week kind of thing. So it's
never thought about that when it comes to some of the concentrate materials that we have in market, is that because typically you have packaged on dates, right? And for those other license holders, some of them put harvest dates and terpene contents, and they go the extra mile. But
do
for the
with
vast
everything
majority,
except that.
I love it. But I mean, you're at least giving more, right? Rather than, and that's the hard part for me, especially in a dispensary setting. My old eyes looking at it going, oh my God, if you can even get your hands on it, otherwise it's sitting, behind glass. But I want to know that stuff. The vast majority of consumers, unless you are, I don't even want to say connoisseur, I would say educated to understand what this means, you're probably not looking at it. And then you're ending up with an inferior product potentially, and you're not enjoying it, which means, one, you're probably not going to have a repeat buy. But if you're a newcomer to industry, it may be a bad experience too. So I'm glad that you're at least putting as much as you can when it comes to the packaging. But so you've got hash plant. Hash plant has always intrigued me because I used to grow hash plant, not necessarily thinking it was for it's. I'm starting to draw a line now. But growing hash plant, I never drew the line up until now. But there was something about that cultivar that it was either crazy stinky and neighbors, right? This is going back to my MMAR days. But never drew the line that, the outcome of this should be for hash or a concentrate of some sort. The idiot. Okay. So what's the other one is it shishka berry? No, which berry is it?
Dabbleberry. So
Dabbleberry.
That's a
blueberry,
of course. Wedding cake.
Blueberry wedding cake. Oh my God. Not only are you making me hungry, but now I'm trying to but where can these products be found? Are they all under Dabble? Because I know that you do some supply for
No, I do not.
Some other countries. Oh, you don't? Okay. So all under Dabble, only in BC?
Yes, and available via Mendo Medical to anyone who is elsewhere. But yeah, we are just trying to get a handle on the demand in BC, actually.
Okay.
My goal was, and I said this a long time ago, was to exclusively sell out in BC. Like if BC can just continuously sell us out, which has happened so far, that would be amazing. And people have to come to us to get it. I do eventually see us branching out a little bit, but markets like Ontario are really challenging for shipping, for getting listed, for having that, requiring that presence to reach all the stores. And, a lot of people are like, come out here. And I'm like, well, every producer I hear from says it sucks. And then, Alberta sucks to list in because of the fees and the crazy onerous security checks that are
Which
really
is worse,
expensive.
Ontario or Alberta? It depends on how you slice it, I guess.
I don't know. And then Quebec just doesn't allow concentrates. So it's pretty limited for me.
Or flour over 30%. There's a lot of intricate. Yeah. And so that makes a lot of sense to be with Mendo. But we've discussed this before, which is your standard processing, right? You have standard licenses across. But even you've got your challenges, it's outdoor, you're washing it. You've got all the concentrates, you got packaging. There's so much going on. But for those, sometimes they're a micro or they're just a smaller producer processor. And it's one thing to want to be across Canada. The second is, can you even keep up with the demand? Like if you're selling out, I know for myself, if I was a craft producer of any sort and I could sell out in my local province or even region, why the hell would I want to go anywhere else? Like I'm doing what I've set out to accomplish. I mean, obviously brand presence, you want to be out there more. And I think the Dabble brand is well known across Canada. It's just a matter of how are you getting it? But why move into another province if you can exclusively sell out within BC?
That's my perspective as well. A lot of people are like, when are you guys going to expand? And I'm like, I hope I never do. I hope I'm like a winery where I got people on my wait list to buy cases. All, like that's my dream. I want to be a hashery that is people come here, they stay, they buy, we have a tasting room. They,
man.
That's the dream. And they, come to experience our product because it's ours. My goal is to create cultivars that are exclusively ours. I don't do white labeling. I don't believe in it for myself because we did all the work. Like, I don't want to sell my product at a discount to you for you to put your name on it and your brand recognized. Like, that's just not what I'm about because I'm the one who's in that lab. And so if I can then successfully sell that via my brand, I'm sure as hell gonna try.
Why wouldn't you? I mean, that you've just put it so clearly to me that I've never really looked at it any other way, right? I get an abundance of weed. I got to do something with this. But when you're carving out, that's what true, even though you may be standard, that's craft. Like that to me, I don't care what type of license you have. I don't care how big you are or small you are. If you're putting that energy with that mentality into your product, you're craft. At the end of the day, you're craft to me. And that's the type of product I personally want to consume. Okay, so Mendo, I mean, for our audience and listeners, there's a reason we're with Mendo as a partner to make sure that brands like Dabble are well understood and recognized, but also you're able to order it. It's a great opportunity for brands. I mean, you go Canada-wide overnight, you don't have to deal with excise stamps, right? At least not there. And so that's the one way we can get it, at least until we come out to BC.
Mm-hmm. I hope one day they'll let me ship direct. That's my dream.
And yeah, why wouldn't they? Right? Like
let's not.
Will I roll challenges and all this stuff all day long? There will be reform at some point, but I love the idea of a hashery. Like, come on, this is incredible.
That sounds great.
It is,
especially with an Airbnb.
Now, though.
Like,
I mean, without a formal tasting room, like I have a B&B, I give you a tour, you come smoke by the lake, we'll dab together. Like it's
so
happening.
Cool.
It's more private right now, but it's happening.
But still, I mean, it's an experience, right? And being so, we've got to look up the Airbnb listing now to see. In the fall, you might catch a nice whiff of cannabis growing.
It says like 2-bedroom loft on cannabis farm with private lake is the title of it.
You must be fully booked.
No, actually this year is we've had not very many bookings in general. Like I think that the economy is quite substantially hitting people. Bookings and tourism venues I've heard from all kinds of people locally have been dramatically less. Like the economy
Tom, get the credit card. Get the credit card out, Tom.
Get the credit card out. I mean, it does make sense. There was an abundance of spending and then prices and, inflation and all these things going on. But I would think that for those that are at least local-ish, few hour drive anyways, at most, why not? I mean, you're in BC. Like, it just makes sense to me. Anyways, Alannah, it's been awesome having you on. I do want to give you an opportunity to answer a question. This is what we've been doing. We're having a little bit of fun with it. We may expand on it a bit more. So last week, we had Jazz Samra on, who poses a question to you, and then you get to pose a question to the next guest next week. I'm not telling you who it is, and Jazz didn't know who it was either. Wes should have that question, I think. Okay. Did I send it to you? I did send it to you.
Yeah. I've got the question here. Yeah. So Jazz would like to know, and again, he didn't know who you were or that you were a CEO. So he wanted to know from your perspective, how long should a CEO, when a company's in trouble, when a LP is in trouble from, whether it be from revenue or lots of losses or there's bad EBITDA, all that stuff, right? How long, what's that time frame a CEO should have before they are either replaced or let go?
Before they're shit canned.
Yeah, basically, let's put it nicely. Yeah, that's, what's that time frame?
Family kicks me to the curb. Obviously, a bit of a different situation, whether you're a private or a public company. Let's just assume we're talking public companies first, because everyone kind of has the ability to see the writing on the wall there. I think, like, if you're given a good year, probably, I guess it depends. Like, if you're given a poor situation, you should be given at least a year to turn it around, or at least to make some strides. If you're the one who created this situation, then I guess as long as there's continuous decline and not really a change, a material change, probably a couple quarters. But from a private company stance, I don't necessarily know that that's really something that, anyone but the CEO can make that decision for them. I would say my family operates on a pretty collaborative basis for the most part. I make a lot of unilateral decisions on things that are, packaging, marketing, what events we're going to attend, things like that. But if I'm going to make a big purchase, or if we're going to need to, expand in any way, it's very much a team and family decision, and Ross gets looped in as well. And so, I think that's...
It's a tough question to answer, right? It really is. And I think it was on the heels of the news with, there was OGI reporting massive losses. And I mean, you touched on this already with Aurora. There was a lot of shitty things happening to really good people. We saw it firsthand. We were riding shotgun at the time. But you start to question, right? What's going on? Why is the air quote upper echelon of these executives not getting touched when clearly they're the ones steering the ship? So it's a good answer. It's a bit of a loaded question because it's difficult to answer when it comes to that. But now it's your turn. You get to put someone else in the hot seat. I expect a really good question from you, Alannah, because you've seen a lot and you've been challenged with a lot and you've overcome such so far. So you get to pose the question. Next question to the incoming guest.
I always like to know, what's the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Great question.
I love that question. Now, before we wrap though, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
If something doesn't exist for you, like a job description or job posting or whatever, create a proposal and ask for it to exist, or create some sort of, ask.
Well, that's a great piece of advice. I think I will use that too. Alannah, it's been awesome having you on. I know you have a ton of things going on. It's getting plants ready to get in the field. Man, I get anxiety thinking about what you're about to go through, but it sounds like you have an incredible team that's able to make sure that this goes off seamlessly, hopefully. But it's been a pleasure having you on and sharing your story, understanding more about the world of Dabble and what we can expect. I'm very much looking forward to trying some Dabble product. Thank God I'm with Mendo. I can get my hands on it quicker than flying to BC, probably more affordable too. But anyways, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. You're a rock star when it comes to this industry. I can tell you that.
Thanks so much. It's been really great to chat, and look forward to seeing what my advice or my question is for the answer next week.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. It'll be a good one. Well, thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. And hopefully it turns out to be an incredible season for you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, guys.
Well, what do you think, Wes?
I think we need to book a stay at the Airbnb and go take a tour, and maybe we should film it and do some.
That might make sense. But I mean, timely guest, right? Plans are going outdoors now. It's the right season. All I see is farm and work, which I'm not afraid of work. Don't get me wrong.
I do like her perspective though. It's given me, I've seen Alannah in a couple of interviews and stuff online and stuff, but getting to talk to someone in person is obviously different. But I do have a new appreciation now for Dabble, given that her passion behind. My goal is to not expand as fast as possible across Canada. I like that we're BC. I like that we're, we have control over quality and everything here. And I like that. I just really like that about her. So
I love when she said, why would I spend all the time doing this and then in the lab just to send you products so you can put your brand on it?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. And I do get it. Different strokes for different folks. I understand abundance of cannabis and opportunities. I understand all of that, but I love that perspective. It was very refreshing to hear, I'm good with this, right? But no fear. It's with Mendo, so you can still get it.
There you go.
There we go. All right. Well, concludes another episode of Legacies. Thanks for joining, everyone. We appreciate you and your time. As usual, we'll be back next week.
Thanks, everyone.